Hello, everyone. Welcome in, especially all you Prius driving virgins. Welcome to Stuck in the Catchfence. My name is Ryan Peters, your host, joined by my co-host Joe Spillman for tonight's live show. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Ryan. I thought we were actually going through that whole opening there, and we weren't even live, but apparently we are live. So all's good. All's good.
Great it's opening. Been a little bit, so
we've been a good practice.
Yeah. I like to insult the people watching. That usually gets people to subscribe, actually, because they kind of feel guilty. So right. I mean, might as well just throw it out there now and just be complete Generation Z and like smash the subscribe button. Now that you're here, I mean, you might as well, right?
Smash it. I didn't think we were going with smash the subscribe button.
Well, you know,
like, we're kind of geared toward. While we like the Zoomers on this show, Ryan, we're really geared toward the older folks that really know what they're doing, not when they're watching a race, but in other aspects of their life. So if you could just caress and tickle that subscribe button.
Yes, people that are employed, please do your part and hit the subscribe button. So we do appreciate it. Also want to let you know, if you haven't seen us a lot this week when it comes to shorts or content, it's been a hectic week when it comes to occupation jobs. And, you know, sometimes that happens. Typically, we put out quite a bit of content. This week's been a little bit different.
A little busy.
A little bit. And Joe, I do want to say congratulations from a personal level. So thank you very much for that. And, you know, doing the best you can, doing what you do. And we do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we will get back to what is normal this coming week. So, Joe, I have a quick question for you. I know it's been a chaotic week, and we're moving to Kansas. Okay. We also have the Miami Grand Prix when it comes to the Formula One scene coming to the United States. My question to you is, how much have you followed Formula One so far this year?
I've caught every race. You know, maybe not. I think the last race, where were they? Yeah.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah. I had to watch the condensed rerun version of that. I didn't make it up at 7:00 in the morning to watch it, but besides that, I've caught them all in their entirety. Very good production F1 puts on. Boring races, but very, very good production. You know, I think we've said this a million times. Not trying to beat a dead horse by any means, but NASCAR could take the entire page or the entire book. But if they just took one page from F1 on how they put on a broadcast and show a race, we'd be doing a lot better in the NASCAR world.
So if you could give a flag, and I did this for the post-race show because you've been, like you said, you've been preparing and doing a bunch of other stuff for your occupation. What flag would you give the F1 season so far in terms of entertaining you from a racing standpoint?
Racing standpoint? Well, that's hard because if you watch the middle of the pack in F1, there's a lot of moving. You know, if you're, you know, you enjoy American style racing and winning is all that matters, you'd almost have to black flag F1. But you know, as far as race quality through the whole race, I mean, you know, I'd give it a solid yellow.
Solid, okay. So we're a full course yellow, not like a F1 like section yellow, a full course.
Yeah, okay. Not a virtual yellow, full
virtual yellow.
Yeah,
gotcha. That is a thing, you NASCAR fans. They can do virtual yellows.
Yeah, virtual pace car.
Yeah, Joe, I would red flag it. I would red flag the competition when it comes to what we've seen so far hasn't been great.
No.
And I jumped in at the perfect moment, Drive to Survive on Netflix, watched it, loved it. And I said, all right, I'm diving into Formula One. So that marketing did a good job. And then I got the entire Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, the season-long battle that came down to the very last race, literally the very last couple laps.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my expectations moving forward for what I could expect. And unfortunately, Red Bull has kicked in the door like the Kool-Aid man and said, oh, yeah, we're going to dominate every freaking race.
Yeah.
So
they're just for Red Bull and Ferrari, you know, they're just head and shoulders above everybody else in the field. Mercedes is staying respectable. But outside of that, I mean, you basically have 3 teams competing week in and week out, and that's what you're going to get in F1. You know, it's just, it is what it is, and that's what you have to expect. And when we do, if we're able to do a you know, best bet show this week, tomorrow on the NASCAR race, I plan on throwing some F1 in there, but you're going to get minus odds for the favorites, so that's usually not very good. And also I am going to give you, if we could do this early enough tomorrow, I will give you who I'm picking for the Kentucky Derby tomorrow as well.
I think you should probably do that at the end, because the qualifying for NASCAR is at 5:30 tomorrow. So that's pretty late. And we typically don't do our betting shows until qualifying's done, because we've told you we want to be informed when it comes to giving you money and letting you win money. We could just throw it out there hypothetically and then have no idea what qualifying happens, and then you get screwed, but we don't feel like that's typically the right thing to do. So Joe, save that towards the end, because you could win some people some money. Yeah,
I could, but I probably can't do that, because you got to look at the odds about 2 hours before race time to make your final bets on the Kentucky Derby. So, well,
give us your feelers when at the end. Give us your feelers at the end. Okay. So we're going to dive into NASCAR. We actually will talk a little bit about the Miami Grand Prix and kind of sense what you guys are thinking as well when it comes to now F1 moving into domestic soil. So some of the news, which there is one huge topic that we will talk about, but some of the news, RCR loses its appeal with the panel. So they gave a description, Joe. They actually said that the nut being used, because this is the new rule now that they have to give a description, the nut that they were using does not resemble the nut that was typically used when it comes to the back portion, the rear portion of the car. So the appeal was lost by RCR. And Joe, you've been clamoring for transparency. Now, you're not a big fan of making up rules in the middle of the year,
right?
But I think this type of rule, because it doesn't really change anything from, how we do things from a suspension standpoint or things of that nature, but now giving transparency, I mean, that's what we want, right?
It is what we want, but the rule in and of itself, you just said it. In my opinion, I think that when we're talking about in the altering of single source parts, or something that we and I don't know if this falls on the line of single source parts, but the altering of these parts or using different parts on these next gen cars specifically has been something that's really been driven home. Now, here's my problem with these rules in general. If they don't alter your ability or don't enhance your ability on the racetrack or your car's ability on the racetrack or give you a competitive edge, I don't understand what the point of having those rules are. I mean, if you're going to alter mechanical things or something that changes the arrow on the car, I understand that. But if you're talking about something that fastens another part down and it doesn't give you a competitive edge on the racetrack, why are we enforcing those rules? What makes that so egregious that you're going to take points away, that you're going to fine a team? I just don't understand it. Maybe you can give me some insight or your opinion.
To be honest, Joe, I don't know if there is something that I can give you that's going to give you a rationale to say they deserve this penalty. The only thing that I can tell you is, again, they broke a black and white rule that they themselves said you can clearly tell this is not the same part, which I believe is the bolts or the nuts used for the back end of the spoiler. And they said it's clearly not what we gave. Now, how does that help? I have no idea. I think what NASCAR is trying to do is say it's easier for us to say don't change something versus us go a case by case basis and say, well, this doesn't change the performance of the vehicle, so therefore it's okay. And I think because they don't want to get in that type of subjective argument that you're kind of talking about, like, hey, this doesn't really help. If anything, it secures the part down better.
Right.
But the argument from NASCAR is it doesn't matter everybody's supposed to be using the same thing. Now, that being said, Joe, NASCAR, in my opinion, needs to move away from that. I understand that they want this to be a car that everybody can jump in and drive, but we've talked about it over and over again over the last few races, because to me, I know Dover, Jeff Gluck's poll got a 60%. That was not a 60% approvable race for me. That's not the Dover I saw last year. The next gen car, and maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm completely biased. Has not been nearly as good this year as last year. I thought last year, Joe, it took, other than the Martinsville race, a really long time for us to go, man, the next gen car has not done well. And maybe that's because we talked about the tires. Maybe that's because we talked about all these other things, the safety of it. But I think NASCAR needs to let the ingenuity come out to let these teams separate. And so maybe this rule has only existed because of this car. But at the end of the day, NASCAR has made it black and white. But to your point, did it help? Probably not. It literally probably not. What I can imagine, Joe, is you know the little wrench you get from when you get a like a piece of furniture to set together, and you get that little wrench like that, and you're like, wow, that's a piece of shit. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use what I have in my toolbox. That's what I imagine happens when NASCAR teams get these parts and go, wow, that's a piece of shit nut that's never going to stay on the right way. I'm going to use what I already have because I own a machine shop, because we build cars. And then unfortunately they get penalized for it.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly what's going on. And at the end of the day, I understand what you're saying. I understand maybe where NASCAR is coming from by saying these are the parts we're giving you. Everybody's using the same parts. You have to use them. I understand that. But at the end of the day, if it's not changing the performance of the car, I don't believe it should be a rule. And I think that NASCAR.
I agree with you, Joe. I agree.
It's just, it just doesn't make any sense to me that you're going to penalize the team for using a different bolt to bolt on the spoiler. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't understand it from a logical standpoint, and the logical fallacy is what you would have to argue during the appeal. But if that's what you're arguing, then you're still admitting guilt, if that makes sense.
No, I understand that. They broke the rule. Yeah, I get it.
Right.
And I'm not even saying if it's a black and white rule this year that they shouldn't be penalized. But I think, as you progress down the road this season, I mean, apparently NASCAR is not above changing the rules in the middle of the season.
It's true.
Just say, what, this is a dumb rule. We're gonna stricken that from the rule book. If you want to bolt your spoiler on with plastic tacks, that's on you. But this is the spoiler you have to use, which does change the aero of the car and the dynamics and could give you a competitive edge. Now, I'm not talking about what Brad Keselowski did last year when he filed his spoiler down, allegedly. But, if he wants to tack it on there with thumbtacks, that's on him, I think.
I agree with you 100%. I think that NASCAR's went above and beyond to try to make this an equal playing field. And unfortunately, I think long-term it's hurt their product. Yeah. Because we need separation, we need ingenuity, and we're taking that away, all for the name of being cheaper, shittier parts, so that this sport is more accessible to our lower level teams. And Joe, I don't think that replicates any other major sport in all of sports. I mean, on all of sports, we're talking about, we want the best helmets.
Yeah.
We want the best basketballs. We want the best shoes. We want the best hardwood floors. We're engineering the grass, for God's sakes, in football games. And then NASCAR goes, we should get shittier parts so that Rick Ware Racing can be able to afford it.
And what I equate it to is not like a salary cap that you see in the NFL or other sports. That's not even what I equate what the NASCAR rules are with these parts. What I equate this to is the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Texans and the NFL going, you know what, the Texans are really shitty, so you're not going to be able to play Joe Burrow in this game. I mean, so
really, yeah.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that they have taken one of the things, the biggest things that have driven this sport was each team's ability to engineer and manufacture the success of their team, whether it be through their engines or their aero or any other parts on their car, and really has helped the what I'll call the civilian market, the automobile market, and progressing the everyday cars that we drive on the road. And we've moved past that to where NASCAR is dictating everything that's going on on these vehicles, and it's taken all the engineering away from the teams. And I think it's really slowing down the progression of the sport.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've talked about things that, we use for safety. I mean, even in, I remember when Ford came out and said, this is the first aluminum truck. Do you hear them tout that anymore? No.
Right.
Do you know who uses aluminum parts? NASCAR.
Right.
And, there's that type of things where it feels like the sport is going backwards, and the sport's supposed to be replicating the future of automobile racing. And from a stock car standpoint, and the things we're using on this stock car are cheaper than what you could get at O'Reilly, it feels like. And we're having all kinds of issues because shit's not forming up. And as you know, Joe, an OEM part is nothing like, an aftermarket part. And
Right.
It feels like we're using aftermarket parts to build our NASCARs.
Right.
And that's not how this sport was designed.
Yeah.
The best engineers.
Some drilling required.
Yeah, drilling, shaving,
Yeah.
Throwing shit against the wall,
Get some extra
keeping your
shins.
receipt.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff. So, hopefully that changes. Hopefully NASCAR recognizes these type of changes and lets the people that are really good in motorsports when it comes to the engineering, the actual science of it, take over versus, no, you have to use this piece of shit that we gave you because we want to make sure BJ McLeod can put in 35% of a race.
Yeah.
But
JJ Yeley's doing well, though.
He actually is doing well. And I've been playing NASCAR 2003. Has pretty good rides on there. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like I'm turning around, dude, the JJ Yeley, Rick Ware Racing hate I've been doing. And Joe, that's a perfect segue to get into our next topic. But before we get there, you've made it this far. You might as well like and subscribe to the channel. Comment, let us know who your favorite racer is. I got the Iron Man behind me, Ricky Rudd, subbed out the 28 Kenny Irwin for Ricky Rudd. And you can actually get a diecast if you like. Subscribe and let us know who your favorite driver is. We're on the road to 500 subs, and we'll give you a free diecast car of your favorite driver. So you mentioned Rick Ware Racing, JJ Yeley. Well, Joe, they probably have the best driver that I could possibly think of ever, maybe in their short history coming in, as the Rocket. Ryan Newman decided that he's going to run a few races this year.
He's just coming back to kick Joey Logano's ass. That's it.
He was so hard to pass and decent. What's he going to do in Rick Ware Racing, man? I imagine that's going to be like the guy that's driving in the left lane at 45 mile an hour on I-71 and goes, no, you're not getting around me. I don't give a shit.
The good thing about Ryan Newman is he might finish last, but he'll wreck the entire back half of the field.
He will.
Just to make a point. I'm pretty excited to see this, actually.
Yeah, on NASCAR 2005, whenever you finish racing, it lets you know who your rivals are. It will just show the finishing order for Ryan Newman whenever he gets done. Because when he goes down for the third time, he gets lapped for the third time, and prevents the leader from just going around him again. No, I'm actually excited. I hope Ryan Newman does have a decent race.
I did hear that Rick Ware Racing is going to equip his car with paintballs. So,
some NASCAR 98 reference. A lot of video game reference.
I know.
Good job, Joe.
Right.
So just a small thing. I think it's good to see Ryan Newman. He's obviously racing in SRX. So it's good to see him back in the NASCAR. I thought maybe it could have been premature to have him leave, but coming back in a Rick Ware Racing vehicle, if he actually does well, it will prove that he still has some left in the tank. If he doesn't, then he can just say, well, I was given a Rick Ware Racing shitbox. So moving on to this weekend, we kind of already talked a little bit about Formula One, but Joe, I want to get your opinion on this. Lewis Hamilton, while in Miami, and maybe he's just filling the glitz and glamour that is South Beach, Florida, said that he would like to attempt to drive a NASCAR. Now, we've already seen that from Kimi Räikkönen. We shared when I believe it was it Jensen Button that got into NASCAR on our short, said it's kind of scary. Now Lewis Hamilton has said he wants to do it. We've had Daniel Ricciardo talk about how much he loves Dale Earnhardt. It seems Formula One drivers keep talking about driving in NASCAR, but they're not having NASCAR drivers talk about moving to Formula One. Why do you think that is?
Well, because the cars are $5 million and NASCAR drivers like to wreck a lot. It's a totally different style of racing. NASCAR drivers will intentionally bump you. And I understand that most of them know when you get in an open wheel vehicle like that, you can't do that. But I think if I'm a team owner, if I'm a F1 team owner, I'm not going to allow a NASCAR driver into one of my vehicles that costs $5 million. So what are the engines in those things are like 800,000 or 1.2 million, something crazy like that.
You literally have to take a grid penalty to take it out.
Right.
In Formula One.
So, but yeah, I mean, F1 drivers wanting their shot and putting their hat in the circle to, eventually drive a race in NASCAR. I don't mind seeing any of those guys wreck. So they can try to jump in one of them cars and give it a go.
My question to you, Joe, and I think this is kind of a bigger picture thing. We've had people on this show say that Formula One's going to take over NASCAR one day. I know Formula One said they're expecting 90,000 people. They did not sell out so far. They haven't sold out their just general admission, probably because it's $500 to walk in for general admission for practice. Here's where I draw the line, and I think this is where NASCAR needs to do a better job marketing. When Lewis Hamilton says he wants to drive a NASCAR, when Kimi Räikkönen does drive a NASCAR, when Jenson Button does drive a NASCAR, and NASCAR drivers are not pushing to drive a Formula One car, they should say, this is how good our product is, that that world-class racers want to be participating in our sport, and our sport goes, we don't really care to participate in your sport. Not that that's a slight. I just think that the entertainment value of NASCAR, the bumping and running like you're talking about, Joe, in NASCAR, the forgiveness of the cars and doing all the challenges of the weight of these cars show to the other drivers of the world, this is a product that they could get behind and go, I don't know if I would be good at this.
Right.
And the NASCAR driver goes, it's a $5 million car. We run on short tracks anyway, or we run on road courses anyway. We're not really concerned about doing that in the Formula One car because we could pretty much just run in an Indy car and get pretty close to that. But a Formula One driver is going out of their way to say, I really want to drive a NASCAR. And I think NASCAR needs to capitalize on that and say, look, we're not worldwide known. We're domestic. But at the same time, we have the greatest drivers perceivably in the world. Keep talking about our product and not the other way around.
Well, I think it's, it's much like football, right? Football on the world stage right now is exploding. Europeans are falling in love with American football. Sure. And I think you could kind of look at NASCAR the same way. For a very long time, F1's been around for a very long time. That's what, the rest of the world watches as far as auto racing. And NASCAR is kind of going on the world stage, and they've helped themselves with that by holding races in Mexico and places like that, and kind of, getting that outside of, their domestic demographic. And what I think we're seeing is fans of F1, fans of other forms of auto racing happen to catch a NASCAR race, or they see these F1 drivers competing in a road course and they see how brutal the racing is. They see, I mean, the quintessential, don't let your foot off the gas and just drive. And it doesn't matter who's in front of you or behind you, you're just going to go. And I think they fall in love with that. And I think when you're talking about stock car racers here in America, or even sprint car racers, dirt track racers, they see F1 and I think they kind of view it like the vast majority of Americans viewed soccer for a very long time. It's a less physical version of auto racing, and I don't want anything to do with it.
That's a great point, Joe. And I think what is being lost among the American version of whatever sport it may be, is the physicality of it. Because in the United States, we have said if you're bigger, stronger, and more importantly, put in the work to try hard to be the best, you will get the best more often than not. In Formula One, it's all about who you know. Lance Stroll, his dad owns the Aston Martin team. Lance Stroll is not one of the greatest drivers in the world. I promise you that. We've already had two drivers, Nikita Mazepin, or Massive Spin, only got the ride for Haas because a Russian company decided they were going to sponsor Haas. And NASCAR, we've made the conversation before, Joe, about Ty Dillon and Austin Dillon and a few others. Ty Gibbs at one point. But make no mistakes about it, they also had to earn their stripes in the lower series to get to the point that they could drive a NASCAR. And that's not the same as in Formula One. And I think what we're seeing now is physicality rules. Maybe it goes back to the gladiator days. Maybe it does. I have no idea. But human nature is we want to see the most physical, strongest, best specimen win. And the United States has done a better job doing that in motorsports and overall in sports than any type of European or worldwide sport. Am I wrong saying that?
No, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's an American perception. I mean, I've never been a soccer fan, but I've watched soccer games. I watched the World Cup. That's a physical game, and it could be very physical and be within the rules. But I think that the American perception of what we do with like American football, or you talk about NASCAR and stock car racing, or really any form of American racing when it comes to sprint cars, modifieds. I mean, it's bump and go, and that is what our style of racing is, and that's what our really as a microcosm, that's what our country has been, and that's what we like to see. I think that we as Americans take the brutal aspect of things, the physically dominant aspect of things, and we drive on that, we feed on that, and we become fans of it. I think when you look at other sports on the world stage, whether that be soccer, F1, or other forms of auto racing, it's about being technically proficient, and the long game plan of planning out a race and making sure that your lap times are good, and making sure that you take the turn at the right speed and the right angle every time, and that's what they look for, and that is the F1 sport. So I just think it's basically two different ideals on what auto racing is, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to go on a rant, but
I do.
I just think it's really two different sports. I mean, football and soccer are two different sports. F1 and NASCAR are two different sports.
So all that being said, Joe, obviously Formula One's making a push into the American market. It seems like the drivers are making a push into the NASCAR market. Which one do you think is going to prevail more? Do you think that Formula One is going to reach more NASCAR fans to turn them to Formula One? Or do you think NASCAR is going to reach more Formula One drivers and Formula One fans to push them towards NASCAR?
I think any American fan that is solely an F1 fan is solely an F1 fan. They may watch NASCAR because that's what's on. Now, I'll say this. I think any NASCAR fan that watches F1 are people like you and I that are just fans of auto racing, and we like to watch racing. I'm never gonna say that F1 is my preferred racing sport. I'm never gonna say that IndyCar is my preferred racing sport. I love to watch IndyCar. You're not that into IndyCar, but you'll probably watch it if it's on because you love auto racing.
It did. I actually did watch the Alabama Grand Prix with Grosjean in the battle for second and third place. It was actually pretty good.
So and we're not even talking about that because they just don't put it out. The IndyCar season has been incredible this year. Absolutely incredible. They've had great racing. And I just think that and that too, I mean, if you're an IndyCar fan, because there's a lot of IndyCar fans out there that really don't get the love that NASCAR fans do or F1 fans do. You're a fan of IndyCar, and you may watch NASCAR, you may watch F1, but you watch IndyCar. I don't think that any particular race series is going to pull fans, diehard fans, over to their series. I don't think F1 is going to pull fans away from NASCAR, and those fans just aren't going to watch NASCAR anymore. I really look at it as a different alternative, or another alternative to watch more auto racing. Now, I will say this. I do think that F1, if they want to grow their American base, if IndyCar wants to grow their American base, or IndyCar wants to grow their base, they need to stop competing with each other. F1 is better suited to do that just because of the times that they come on. And normally, there's not a NASCAR race on at 9:00 in the morning on a Sunday, but IndyCar has got to stop holding their races at the same time as NASCAR. If they want, they want to pull from that base at all.
Right. And I think NASCAR at the same time, Joe, doesn't need to try to fit in the Formula One market by trying to have a street race. That's not why the sport was founded. And I think they should do more things to say, hey, our sport's doing good enough to where we have other drivers around the world want to participate in it. Let's not try to replicate what these cars are not built for by having a street race like IndyCar, or excuse me, like Formula One, which I think is going to be a catastrophic failure. I will stay with that to the end. They even price it as such because we were talking, the average fan that, I took last year to the Indy Road Course, we spent around $30 to get in. To get into the street race, Joe, is $235.
That's crazy.
The bare minimum. And that does not attract the average fan. To me, to make a non-political statement, to take this as you will, that's like having Dylan Mulvaney market Bud Light.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense.
I can tell you this, there's not a NASCAR race on the planet that I will go to for more than $80. And NASCAR needs to understand that. I will not go to a NASCAR race for more than $80. The money that I'm going to spend there already with camping, with food at the track, I'm not paying more than $80 a ticket to go to any race on the NASCAR circuit. I just will not do it.
Yeah, more often than not, Joe, the most expensive ticket I pay for the entire year is the World of Outlaws. And that's because I can be right on top of the track, see it right then and there. And it's an entire night full of racing versus just that moment, that a 3-hour race is.
Which is coming up, by the way. But I will tell you that Kyle Larson was DQ'd in a heat race today at Eldora.
At Big E?
Yeah. Just a little bit ago.
I'll be damned.
They red flagged the race and he didn't stop and they DQ'd him. Total bullcrap, really.
Well, you are supposed to stop on a red flag.
Yeah. When you don't see it, that's, that when you're running those, whether it be late models or the sprint cars, they don't have radios in their car.
It's true.
So it's like, the more to come on that. I might do a little segment on that because it thoroughly ticked me off.
I understand that. I can understand that. And maybe you should just do an entire solo video on Ross Chastain and your love affair for him.
Yeah.
This segment went a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but it actually was a great topic. We were going to break down the Miami Grand Prix last year, to be completely honest. Terrible race. Maybe the worst race on the entire season. I don't expect anything different, Joe. So our quick analysis will be that I'm actually surprised Mercedes looked a little bit fast, but at the end of the day, I'm betting Red Bull.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it'll be Red Bull or Ferrari. One of those two teams are going to win. So, that is what it is. That's what you get with F1.
So now, and this show is going to go a little bit long. We haven't been here all week. We typically do this thing and go a little bit shorter, but today we're going to go a little bit longer with it. So again, if you're with us, like, subscribe. We appreciate that you're here. If you have a question, make sure that you send it in. We'd love to answer it for you while we're still on air. The biggest news of the week, Joe, Legacy Motor Club, which is now owned by Jimmy Johnson, or being co-owned by Jimmy Johnson, has made a huge announcement. And this is something that I alluded to earlier in the season. I said, Toyota is going to make a splash. I said, I didn't know who. I kind of hinted that maybe it would be Stewart-Haas because they seem like they need a jolt. Mm-hmm. But instead, it's actually with 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson. Legacy Motor Club will be switching over to Toyota at the beginning of next year. Which is also funny as I mentioned to you and the rest of you viewers, that I've been severely disappointed how terrible Noah Gragson and Eric Jones have been this year. I think that all makes sense now. I think it all makes sense that this has probably been in the works for a while now. I'm sure Chevy is known. And as we would love to come on here and tell you that everything is fair, that Kyle Busch did not get absolutely raped at the end of last year once he made the decision to move to RCR.
Denny Hamlin said that wasn't true.
I can promise you this. Legacy Motor Club will get nothing from Chevrolet this year to be competitive. And it makes more sense now because I think Legacy Motor Club probably wanted to hold on to that for a little while because they had no reason to announce it. But due to the fact that Noah Gragson has not been very good, Eric Jones has been completely abysmal. I think, Joe, it makes more sense now that we know that Legacy Motor Club will be moving to Toyota, that they have not been very well. But my question to you is, what are now your expectations? And do you think this is a good acquisition from Toyota to get Legacy Motor Club?
Well, my expectations for the rest of the season are spot on with yours. Legacy Motor Club, they're not going to be. Yeah, they're not going to be competing. They're dead in the water as far as this year. We'll have to see what happens with Toyota. I really thought that if a team was going to jump ship from their manufacturer, I really thought it was going to be from a Ford to Toyota. I really thought that. I have a hard time seeing a Chevrolet team flipping to Toyota, but we'll see what happens. I really don't know what to expect. I really think, and this is my opinion, I'll probably get some hate for this because I know people are stuck on their manufacturers, and I really don't put that much stock in the manufacturers anymore. Especially with the next gen car, I know each car got a little bit different aero with it, and it's supposed to replicate what's actually out there on the roadways just a little bit more than the past generation of the cars. But I really think these cars are so similar from Toyota to Chevrolet to Ford that I really don't think that manufacturer matters anymore. And I know diehard NASCAR fans hate to hear that, but I feel like that's the truth anymore. I really don't know that changing manufacturer, other than the support that they will get from that manufacturer, is going to make much of a difference for any team. I could be wrong, though.
I think, Joe, it's to the point that it's what are you specializing in? Obviously, RCR is not specializing in short track racing because they've been absolutely terrible. Toyota, it seems like, has specialized in what we're getting ready to run this weekend in 1.5 miles. And then, Ford is really specialized and done really well in super speedway racing. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I would agree with you that, like, it just doesn't seem like one team to another has done so well on anything, except one team has done well on a certain type of track versus a different type of track, if that makes sense.
Right.
The way that I look at this from Toyota, and Mr. Wilson from Toyota, who just lost Kyle Busch last year, and we're now seeing, they needed to make a splash. I've said that. Toyota had to do something to make a splash. I look at all the lower tier teams, and maybe Petty GMS or Legacy Motor Club, whatever you want to call it, isn't lower tier. I would say that they're lower-ish if they're at the bottom of the middle. Maybe it's just Live Fast Motorsports and Rick Ware Racing are the lowest, but I see Eric Jones, who's going to be 27 years old next year, and Noah Gragson, who's a rookie, and go, what prospects can I get to move a team? And Legacy Motor Club sees an opportunity to move and make a different direction going from Chevy to Toyota. And I think Toyota probably did the best they could, Joe, outside of maybe going to Front Row Motorsports and saying, we want Zane Smith and Todd Gilliland. Because I really like those two drivers.
Yeah.
That's the only options that I see that Toyota could have grabbed two younger drivers and said, we want to move forward with this. I think Legacy Motorsports probably would be the second best if I was going to just, create a baseball prospect type list. But getting Eric Jones and getting Noah Gragson is really two good gets for Toyota, who's really living kind of long in the tooth with its other top tier team in JGR.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, man, I don't know. I'll go back to the point that maybe that will give them a boost, but I just can't get over that hump that I just don't think manufacturers matter. I don't know. I really can't say much more than that on that topic.
You think being the third best manufacturer for Toyota, let's just say that. Let's just say they're the third best because they only have two teams. Do you think that's more important than being the seventh best at Chevy?
I mean, yeah, I could see that angle, and I'm not trying to be difficult with you.
No, you're not. I'm just asking.
I think more of, if you're going to build a race team, I think it's more of what you're doing internally to progress your team. Like we see at Hendrick, like we have seen at RCR in the past, and now, because obviously it seems like RCR is putting more effort into what they're doing with their two drivers now, bringing Kyle Busch over. It really looks like they're starting to move forward, in my opinion. I thought that they had a driver, RCR specifically, with Reddick last year that they could have built a team around. Obviously, they let him go, and I think that bringing Kyle Busch on, I think they're moving forward as well. And I think if Legacy Motorsports wants to move forward, I think the people that they have in their car, they have quality drivers. I don't think that it's a driver issue with them. I don't think it's a manufacturing issue with them. I think it's a transition issue. But maybe at the end of the day, maybe that's exactly what Jimmy Johnson's looking at, is we need a fresh start here. We need to build from the ground up, and we're going to build with the ground up by totally transitioning this team into another manufacturer. And I could see that angle as well. But at the end of the day, I have a hard time believing that switching a manufacturer is going to really do anything substantially to really grow your team.
Yeah, let's play a game.
Okay.
I want to play. If you've ever watched Saw. Your Toyota. I say you have the option of this driver or Eric Jones and Noah Gragson. You have to let me know who you would pick.
Okay.
Austin Cindric.
I'm going to stay with Eric Jones.
Michael McDowell.
I'm going to stay with Eric Jones.
Bubba Wallace.
I'm going to take JJ Yaley.
Justin Haley.
That's a hard one.
Got to pick one.
Oh man. Well, I could already see your point. But yeah, that's a crapshoot there.
Justin Haley's still young. I understand that.
Yeah.
Chase Briscoe.
Ooh, I like Chase.
You want Chase more? Okay. Chris Buescher.
I like him too.
Okay. So right now in points, Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell, Austin Cindric, they're all above currently where Eric Jones is sitting.
Right.
So if you're Toyota, you look at this and go, I can improve until I think we can at least point our way into the top 20 by getting these type of young drivers. And I think that's the right thing to do. Now, if they went out and said, we're going to acquire, Michael McDowell and I don't know, insert elderly driver, Eric Almirola, I would go, what is the direction? What are we doing? So I think Toyota does the right thing and say, we're going to get a 27-year-old and we're going to get a rookie that Noah Gragson can sell. Noah Gragson sells. There's people that like Noah Gragson.
Yeah.
Number one, because he raced it for Junior Motorsports. And number two, because he has a personality. And he wants to kick Ty Gibbs' ass, who is now kind of his teammate. So that's going to be an interesting angle. And I think Toyota did the right thing, again, outside of if they could have got Todd Gilliland and maybe Zane Smith. I'm not sure I would lean more that way. It'd be very close. That's about the best two prospects I could imagine currently in NASCAR right now. And then Zane Smith, obviously, a little bit lower. So tell Michael, Joe, to not get rid of that Zane Smith autograph.
Believe me, he's not getting rid of that. That's the only, he only cares to watch truck races now.
That's awesome.
He's
So, Joe, moving on, we're now going to move to Kansas. And if you give me the ability, I will show you where everybody is currently in the standings. You hold the power. I'm just a peasant. I tend the field. I show the crops. You give me a place to live.
I have now let you in.
Okay. This is currently where we are at in the standings. Joe's favorite driver in NASCAR, Ross Chastain, is currently number 1 in the projected playoffs without a win.
Hate that
Christopher Bell is in second, Kyle Larson in third, Kyle Busch in fourth, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex, who bumps up way high after getting that win, William Byron, and then Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, which Kevin is third in points, so that's a good season so far for him. Joey Logano has been either really good or really terrible, and it kind of feels the same way with Kyle Busch. And then Ricky Stenhouse still hanging strong, 11th in playoffs, 14th. And then kind of moving down, again, to me, the best team improvement-wise, Brad Keselowski and Christopher Buescher. Brad Keselowski said we went from irrelevant to relevant. Now we're trying to go from relevant to championship contender.
Yep.
No, they're getting close, man. They're going to win. If I was to bet, they're going to win a race this year.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, where they were last year with the penalty and just the absolute monstrosity that turned into their season, I mean, this is a complete 180 from where they were this time last year. So
there is our point standings. This is the cutoff. We cut off at 20. So that's currently where we're at. Joe, moving into Kansas, to me, it's our first cookie cutter. We've had mile and a half when it comes to Las Vegas, but Kansas is the cookie cutter. And last year, Toyota did really, really good at the mile and a half cookie cutters. You know, last year, 23-11 actually dominated Kansas last year. Do you expect the same, even though there is a different driver in Tyler Reddick instead of Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace? Do you think he has the ability to maintain a chance to win Sunday?
I think 23-11, as long as their cars hold together, I think even Bubba Wallace will probably fare pretty well. I think what we've seen, though, on mile and a halves, cookie cutter tracks, if you will, all the manufacturers are actually running relatively well at cookie cutters. So, really, I think this race is a race that you're really going to have to go down and say, who's going to do well this week? Well, I think who's going to do well is this is a track that you really have to look at past winners, including Bubba Wallace now at this point, and say, this guy's won here multiple times. This guy's won here multiple times within the last couple of years. And those are the drivers that you should be looking at, because truly, when you talk about the next gen car and mile and a half tracks, this is, you throw out and talk about, okay, it really makes road racing better. It's killed the short tracks, super speedways, cars aren't locking together and it's not typical of what we've seen with 4 or 5 wide racing and super speedways. It's killed that because of the side draft. Right now, we get to watch what this next gen car is actually made better, and that is the mile and a half. So
right.
This will be a great race. I don't think we had a bad mile and a half last year, except maybe Texas.
We really, even Texas actually was okay.
You're right. So really, I think, we all have our theories on what this next gen car was, and I really think this next gen car was to improve the follow the leader racing that has plagued NASCAR at their most visited tracks of mile and a half, and it really has made that racing better. So I think we'll see a great race this weekend, and I know I'm going to rely on drivers that have won there in the past. So I really don't care about manufacturers this week.
Jumping into the points, I currently lead you by 14 points, which I myself, Joe, would have never, ever predicted. So last week, I ended up gaining 4 points. 2 were from William Byron. 1 was from Josh Berry, and 1 was from Tyler Reddick. So that gave me 4 points to jump to 60. You gained 2 points from Denny Hamlin. If you would like to play with us, we have had a couple of you jump in and tell us your picks. Give us your 5 picks. One outside the top 20 currently in points is the typical way that we do it. We will readjust that when it comes to halfway. But I have my 5. Are you ready for your 5, or do you want me to go first?
No, I'll give you my 5.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, outside of the top 20, I told you I was going past winners. I'm going to take Bubba Wallace. And it pains me to take Bubba Wallace because I hate that guy. I'm also going to take Martin Truex Jr. He's won here multiple times. Kevin Harvick has won here multiple times. Kyle Busch has won here multiple times.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And Kyle Larson has won here twice.
Have you ever had a race where you haven't taken Kyle Larson? That's my big question. Okay.
A couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And he won.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And I will also take a 6th driver this week and Brad Keselowski because he's won here multiple times. So I get the extra points for him. I get 6 this week. You get 5 because I'm behind 14 points.
I'll allow it. All right. So my 5 drivers. And again, I want to let you know we do not discuss our drivers. Even Joe will try to get an in and say, hey, what's the NASCAR show about? And I'll give a little tidbits because I want to get a raw answer from Joe so that he can think about it versus spending the rest of the day for you guys to get some type of contrived answer. But this is specifically off limits. We do not talk about our drivers. So that being said, let's go ahead and get the ones out of the way. Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex. I have all 3 of those. Mm-hmm. Where I differ is I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin.
Denny Hamlin's won here multiple times. I'll take him as well.
Okay, now I draw the line. Actually, Joe, I would put my money that Denny Hamlin wins this week.
Oh, you would?
That's exactly what I would do. I would say that JGR builds upon what they've had, and Denny Hamlin wins this week. It seems like he's been playing with getting a win and hasn't quite been there yet. I would do that. And then I would go with Tyler Reddick, again, because 2311's been fast on 1.5 miles, and I think Tyler Reddick's a talented driver. So I'm going to go to Tyler Reddick as well. So give me all Toyota and then Kyle Busch, mainly because Kyle Busch has just been amazing on 1.5 miles. Yeah. I mean, his career, he has dominated 1.5 miles.
Well, he's dominated Kansas. I think he has 4 wins, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I'll go one step further. So we're going to try to do a betting show tomorrow. And I'm actually going to play some live bets during the show, some straight line bets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put $10 right now on Denny Hamlin tomorrow, no matter where he qualifies. I'll say that. And then also, if you want to play this game, if you happen to see our video up until this point, you give me the driver that you want me to put $10 on, as long as it's not egregious like a JJ Yaley. Yes. If we get multiple votes on a single driver, I'll throw $10 down on them as well.
Okay. This guy's been winning in the NBA to be doing this stuff. That's what's up. I've
made a lot of money over the last month and a half.
One gambling thing that I can say, if you want to get the best odds, make a bet right now. Because Denny Hamlin will not be the favorite. If he wins the poll, you're going to lose about 600, guess, plus or minus. So if you want to throw a Denny Hamlin to win a race, do it. I would especially advise that for any type of super speedway race. Just do it before qualifying as well.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to play some live bets tomorrow and walk you through it. And then I'm going to be perfectly honest with our viewership here. I'm going to snip that out of our video and I'm going to play that somewhere else because I get paid to make gambling videos. So less work for the money.
The Grueling Truth actually is where you typically write articles for that and have won not just yourself money. Like if you listen to, you win money. We've only had 2 shows. We're going on the 12th race this year. Well, we have not made money. 10 out of 12 is pretty good.
Pretty
Well,
good.
9 out of 11 so far, but we're going to win money,
Right.
whether it be our straight bets, whether it be our FanDuel lineups, which we will do. But Joe, you kind of teased it at the beginning. Who right now tickles your fancy for the equestrian race that is in
Well,
Louisville?
I'm just going to give you the long shot, and I actually forgot the name of the long shot real quick. I think what we were looking at was 44-1 odds as of this afternoon, and I think the 3-year-old has a couple race wins already this year.
I saw one with kind of a suggestive name, and that's the one I would have went with.
Which one was that?
Because I don't know. I don't watch horse racing. I worked for a casino to where we had to set up everything for the Oaks, which happened today, and the Kentucky Derby, and I hate it. And if you've ever had a mint julep and you think that that's a good drink, you're a psychopath because those are absolutely horrible.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, right now there is a horse. There's a horse tomorrow running by the name of Sun Thunder with 50-1 odds.
Sun Thunder.
Sun Thunder, SUN.
Okay.
And I will be placing a bet on that horse. I could tell you that, but I kind of like to watch the odds evolve tomorrow as people are gambling. That's always fun for me to watch. I only bet on horse racing once a year, and that's during the Kentucky Oaks, which ran today, that I didn't win any money on, sad to say, and the Kentucky Derby. I'm not a big horse racing guy, but I I kind of struck gold a couple years back. I put $10 on the long shot, and it was like 70-1 odds, and I ended up winning.
Oh,
I think that was 2 years ago, or maybe that was last year.
Yep.
That was last year.
It was 2 years ago.
2 years
was
ago.
Was it last year? I thought it was 2 years ago.
It was last year or 2 years ago, but I just happened. I always put money on the long shot. How can you not? And that's the first time I ever hit with the long shot. So every year I'll be betting on the long shot from here on out. Probably never win again.
If you went into this show thinking that we weren't going to talk about every possible thing that will be turning left this weekend, you were wrong. Right. We covered the Miami Grand Prix. We covered Kansas in NASCAR. And now we have covered horse racing for tomorrow.
And they don't even have a catch fence.
No. They actually dump. Do they do the milk too? What's the thing that they do for the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, they put that big wreath over you.
Yeah, Talladega does that too, but like it just, I don't know. It's too pompous for me. Girls wearing those stupid hats. I hate everything about it. I'm not. Seabiscuit's going to win.
I went to the Kentucky Derby a couple times, and I remember my first time going to the Kentucky Derby. I was probably 21 or 22 years old, and the big thing.
You're like, wow, that's a shithole. No.
Yeah. Well, the infield of that place is a shithole. I think a guy died there. What a party.
For 5 minutes of racing, yeah.
They have the guy in the heart. Yeah, we probably need to talk about that. You need to leave town. Anyway. So the big thing there is a mint julep, right?
Awful.
That is the worst alcoholic beverage I've ever drank in my life.
Nastiest thing you could ever have.
I was drunk.
Absolutely horrible.
I was intoxicated when I drank one, and it was still horrible. That should tell you how bad it is.
That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. Well, my only prediction is that I hope none of the horses break their leg and then have to be shot in the middle of the track. That's going to do it for us here at Stuck in the Catchfence. PETA, I'm sorry. I'm with you on this one. Quit killing horses at the Derby. Let's win some money on Kansas. We'll see you later.